Things Hoped For by Andrew Clements. Day 4. He sets up his horn, and with no warm-up, he takes off into the last movement of the Haydn Trumpet Concerto. It's all from memory, clean and classical, a silver river, almost 5 minutes with no let-up, and it's very good. And then, effortlessly, he's playing a jazz solo, something I think I've heard before, and it's cool and glassy on the surface, hot and liquid underneath. He leans into the notes, fingers on the pearl buttons, turning the air different shades of blue. It could almost change the way a girl feels about jazz. Before he stops, I have my violin out, and as he finishes, I cut in with runs from the middle of Caprice number 17. It's his turn to listen. And having watched him so closely, now I'm aware of every move I make, each dip of my shoulder and slash of the bow, and I know Robert's watching my fingers dance the way I watched his. And I get so flustered that I have to stop. He says, "No, keep going, please." I'm blushing, and I say, "Could you maybe not look right at me when I play? It makes me nervous. It's a problem I have. I hate playing solos, and if I ever get the orchestra job I want, I'll never have to play solos. But you know how it works, because before I get that job, I'll have to do a jillion auditions, and every audition means I have to play a solo. So it's a problem." He nods. I was like that, scared to be out front. I'm playing with the jazz band, and Mr. Stoyes points at me to take a solo, and the drums and the piano have this great rhythm cooking, and I lift up my horn, and nothing comes out but little squeaks. Happened over and over. Pitiful. Remembering the way he played for John Lennon, I say, "But you're not shy now, because I saw you last night, right there with people all around us. So how'd you get over it?" This unsettled look zips across his face just for a second, and then Robert leans toward me and says, "The truth? A couple years ago? Well, no. It's a really long story." He smiles, then looks down and clicks the valve buttons on his horn. It's the first time I've seen him look flustered, and once again I have the feeling that my trumpet player is full of surprises, plus a secret or two. Then he says, "But let's try something," and he reaches over and flips off the light, which is, in fact, another surprise. This room is 15 feet underground, with a double thick door, no windows, complete darkness. And Robert's voice says, "Now, just play." Is this what you did, play in the dark, to stop feeling shy? Sort of, but don't talk, just play. And then another thought, a big one. Is it because your girlfriend's blind? Is that it? The darkness? Just play, okay? So I do. I take a deep breath, and then the burst of notes that starts the caprice comes ringing out of nowhere, filling the space. The staccato runs, the sharp double stops, the rush and the flutter and the punch, and it's all as if the music is happening without me. My fingers love the dark. They know where they need to be, and they know what they need to do. And this piece sounds so strong. The music is powerful, and so am I, here alone in the dark. But I know I'm not alone. Robert's 3 feet away, or 3 miles, hard to tell. I'm still playing, whipping my bow from string to string, slashing toward the end, and now I understand why he did it, why Robert shut off the light, so he'd disappear. And me too, because that's what needs to happen, with or without the light. You have to let yourself disappear. After the Paganini, it's still for a moment. Then, because I truly am from West Virginia, I make my violin speak like a fiddle, and I begin playing "The Water is Wide." It's an ancient tune, deep and dignified. After one verse, his trumpet reaches out and takes the melody, so I weave a simple harmony through the inky air, first high and then from beneath. The folk song ends, and the silence is dense and peaceful. I have not felt so much at home in a long time. "Out of the darkness," he says. "Nice." And I whisper, "Very nice." And then sitting in the dark suddenly seems too weird, so I fumble for the lights, and as we both blink and smile, I say, "Your teacher's right, and your girlfriend. You really are good. You too, thanks." He dries out his trumpet and puts it away, and as I pack up my bow and fiddle, I love my practice room even more. Then Robert looks at his watch and says, "It's showtime." I'm following him up the stairs toward the parlor, and I say, "Do you really think we should do this? Couldn't we get in trouble?" He stops and turns to look down at me from the top step. "I don't think there's much risk. And getting your uncle to back off for a week or so doesn't seem wrong. Not at all. You're just trying to keep the house going for your grandpa, which is what he asked you to do, remember? And I know just what I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell any lies. I'm going to make simple, true statements. I'm going to use an old man voice. So it's like I'm making a prank call. And when what Hank decides to make of it, well, that's his business." I shake my head. Some smart attorney would love to hear you say all that, and then she'd tear you up into tiny bits and feed you to a judge. Turning and walking into the study, Robert says, "If everything works out right, that'll never happen. I'm ready to dial." Then using Grandpa's voice, he says, "Now, where's that darn telephone number?" Can't bear to stay in the study, so I pace back and forth in the parlor. It's not a speakerphone, so I can only hear Robert's half of the conversation. He sounds exactly like Grandpa. Hello? Well, that's none of your business. You can think whatever you want to. Gwenny? She's doing just what she's supposed to do. Can't help that. Well, go ahead and think whatever you want to, but don't come around here. You want to talk? Talk to my lawyer. Then Robert lets loose with a big coughing fit, and when he's done, he says, and that's the end of it. No, that's the end of it. And then he hangs up. I'm back in the study, and I'm looking at Robert's face. He tries to smile, but it doesn't work. His cheeks are flushed. That guy sounds totally out of it today, yelling and swearing, and he says he's got papers all ready to sign, and he says he needs to borrow some money against his half of this house, or he's going to lose his business, and he needs to get it settled right now. No wonder your grandfather wanted to get away. I shake my head. If you're saying Grandpa ran away and left me to deal with all this because he was afraid or something, that's not true. That's not like him at all. You saw those war medals in the parlor. He would never run from a fight. Robert says, okay, but if he knew Hank was so nuts about needing some money, and he knew Hank was going to keep pushing, then why do you think your grandfather left all of a sudden? That stops me cold. But then the answer comes to me so clearly. Grandpa must have been pretty sure that if he stayed, things would have been worse. Worse than this? Robert makes a face. How? I shrug and I say, I don't know. And on Saturday, that's true. I don't know how things could be worse. But I'm sure Grandpa wouldn't have made it hard for me. Not on purpose. And then I think, wouldn't it be nice if everything always happened on purpose? And then I think, maybe it does. Chapter 8, House Guest. After the phone call to Uncle Hank, we have some lunch before we each spend about 2 hours practicing down in my studio. Me first, and then Robert. And then late Saturday afternoon, I ask him about staying the night. I mean, if you want to, you could even check out of your hotel and just stay here until your auditions are done, in Grandpa's room, if it's okay with your mom and dad. And you can practice here anytime you want to. I keep myself from saying that I don't want to spend another night alone in this house. But I think he knows that. He smiles and nods. That'd be great. My folks will like it. Me being at someone's house instead of a hotel, staying with this kid I know from Tanglewood. Robert's already composing what he's going to say to his parents. And he leaves and comes back at about 6:30 with a rolling suitcase and a backpack and a bag of Chinese food, which is good, because I'm famished. After we've each wolfed down some egg rolls and chicken with pea pods, I ask, so what did your parents say when you told them about staying here? He keeps busy with his chopsticks, talking between bites. My dad was fine with it, but then my mom said she wanted to talk to your grandfather, and I told her that he's away for a while. Then she got all mothered out. So I just said, well, this is what I'm doing because I'm sure it's all right. And if you were here, you'd know it was all right too. But you're not here, so you'll have to take my word for it. And I checked out of the Empire, and here I am. When we're done eating, he says, so who's got the practice room first tonight? You or me? I don't mind taking the late shift, which is perfect for me because I had the early practice this afternoon, and I'm ready to take another run at my pieces, especially the Bach partitas. I'm at the top of the stairs when Robert says, have you ever played a fiddle tune for your teacher and Manhattan? Because you should. I make a face. Bad idea. Pyotr Miladovich would not be amused. He's very formal. Doesn't mean he won't like it, because he should be using that. The energy and the feelings. Have you heard a CD called Appalachian Journey? I shake my head. Bluegrass? It's Yo-Yo Ma with Mark O'Connor on violin and Edgar Meyer on the bass. All three of them classical geniuses. And you should hear what they do with a bunch of old melodies. And you're saying? That it flows both ways. Classical training is great, but there's stuff way back in the mountains that's just as important. As Bartok, ask Sibelius. They know about folk music. I'm just saying you should use everything you've got. And your teacher would say the same thing. Unless he's an idiot. End of lecture. I nod and say, thank you, Professor. And he grins and bows stiffly. As I walk down to my practice room, I have to admit it's good advice, because it's like I have one head that's filled with fiddle tunes and denim overalls, and a newer head that's all sheet music and crystal chandeliers and people wearing tuxedos and evening gowns, and sometimes I still feel like I have to stop being my old self when I play classical music. But this is not a problem I want to tackle tonight. Tonight, I have a different task. At the bottom of the basement steps, I imagine that it's Tuesday morning. I'm walking along a hallway at Juilliard because I'm pretending that I'm actually taking my first audition. I walk into the room and close the door behind me. I prepare my bow and violin and test the tuning. I nod respectfully at each of the faculty members, and I imagine what they asked me to play first. Then I look briefly up at the ceiling to clear my mind, and I begin. And suddenly I'm also imagining that the lights have clicked off, that no one can see me, and it helps. It's only the music, and I don't stop for anything. I play. Getting into college is different for a music student. It's not just what were your grades, and it's not which clubs did you belong to, and were you the class president, and it's not what are your SAT scores. The question for a music student is so simple, only 3 words. Can you play? Can you walk into this audition room and play, today, right now, without messing up? And you only get one chance to get it right, because that's how you have to play music in the real world, in a performance. You practice and practice and rehearse, and when it's time for the performance, you come on stage and take your place. Then the conductor raises the batons and nods, and if you don't come in right on the right beat, with the right notes, and the right pitch, and the right attack, then you've let down the conductor, and you've let down the other 95 musicians in the orchestra, and you've let down the audience. And of course, you've stabbed your bow straight through the heart of the composer, because the only question is, can you play? On Saturday night, I feel confident, and it's good rehearsal time, almost 2 hours, with Sibelius winning the prize for my most improved composer, and Paganini a close second. When I come back up to the parlor, Robert is sitting in Grandpa's recliner, eyes closed, head tipped back, with earbuds in, and his iPod resting on the arm of the chair. I tiptoe over and look at the little screen to see what he's listening to. Kind of blue. It's Miles Davis. Jazz. And I remind myself that sometime I have to ask Robert how he connects his jazz with his classical playing, because I'm sure he's got a theory about that. I've known him less than 2 days, and it's already perfectly clear that Robert has at least one theory about everything in the universe. I touch him on the shoulder, and he jumps like he's been half asleep, and it takes him a second to recognize me. He pulls out the earphones, and I say, "Your turn to practice." "Great," and Robert gets out of the chair and heads downstairs. First, I finish loading the dinner dishes into the dishwasher, and then I put clean sheets and pillowcases on Grandpa's bed and open a window to air out the room. As I put clean towels in the bathroom, that's when I notice that Grandpa didn't take his hairbrush and comb, or his toothbrush and electric razor, which seems odd that he'd leave it in that much of a hurry. And right away I want to try to figure out what it might mean. Of course it might just mean that he decided to take one of those plastic disposable razors instead of the electric one, and he took one of the new toothbrushes that his dentist always gives him. And who knows how many combs and brushes he owns. Or it could be that since he was in a hurry, Grandpa just forgot. Everybody forgets stuff. Even though I can find all these perfectly logical explanations, my worries follow me around like a dark swarm of bees, and I run to the creek, and I dive down deep, and I hold my breath as long as I can. But when I come up, gasping for air, I can still hear the buzzing. And once again, I try to make some shelter in Grandpa's last order to me. "You just keep about your own business and leave all the worrying to me." Grandpa and his orders. My dad said that time in the Army does that to a man, makes him think like a soldier for the rest of his life, especially if he's been to war. I finish my chores, and then I curl up on the couch with my book of poems. But I get up after a few minutes and go into the study. I roll Grandpa's desk chair out of the way, and I reach up and pull Pride and Prejudice off the shelf for the 3rd time, because tonight doesn't feel like a Yeats night. This is a Jane Austen night. And I turn to go back to the parlor, but I stop, because I can hear something. There's music playing. And at first I think it's a radio from upstairs, but it's not. It's Robert. I pull out the chair and sit down, and I can hear the slow movement of the Haydn trumpet concerto drifting up off the metal vent on the floor. It's not loud, but it's clear. The music is beautiful, but that's not why my eyes fill up with tears. It's because I never knew. Grandpa could have had the carpenter block every bit of sound from below, but he didn't. He saved some for himself, just a little, so he could sit here when he wanted to and listen to me play my violin. And I never knew. I smile when Robert ends the movement with his long fluttering trill, and then I wipe my eyes and carry Pride and Prejudice back into the parlor. I lie down again on the couch, and I open the book and begin to read. But on this particular Saturday night, I ask myself, why do I like this book so much? Because someone could read this book and think that it's just a sappy story about this girl and her sisters and how they're all trying so desperately to get married, to find the men who will save them from being old maids. Truth. I have given no serious time in my life to love and romance. Almost zero. Since 7th grade, I have never dreamed of anything except becoming a great violinist in a great orchestra. And even now, that's still my top priority. But here I am, reading Pride and Prejudice again. I flip ahead until I find the last chapter, and after reading a page or two, I realize that it's the main character, Elizabeth. She's the reason I love this book. Lizzie is smart, and she's not just going along with what everyone expects her to do, and she's got everyone figured out, except Mr. Darcy and herself. But that comes full circle by the end. And I love Jane Austen's use of language, too, the way she takes her time to develop a phrase and gives it room to grow so that these clever, complex statements form slowly and then bloom in my mind. Beethoven does the same thing with his cadence and phrasing and structure. It's a fact, Jane Austen is musical, and so is Yeats. And Wordsworth, all the great writers are musical. Thank you again, Miss Page, for more brilliant literary insights. When Robert comes back upstairs, I don't tell him that I listened to him playing from the study. That's a secret, mine and Grandpa's. Robert and I serve ourselves some ice cream. Chocolate for him, vanilla for me. We turn on the tube and catch some Saturday Night Live, but I'm too worn out to keep my eyes open. I've got to sleep now. Eyes on the screen, Robert says, okay, see you tomorrow. Then he turns and smiles. And thanks for asking me to stay. This is really great. I nod. For me, too. And I go downstairs and get ready for bed, and before I close my door, I listen at the bottom of the stairs. I don't hear the TV, so I call, good night. But Robert must be in Grandpa's room already, because he doesn't answer. So I shut my door and lie down and turn off the light. Then I count my blessings. And the last thing I do is say a prayer for my grandpa, and I hope that he has a nice new toothbrush. Chapter 9, Modulation. I sleep until 10 on Sunday morning, and when I go upstairs to the kitchen, Robert's already there reading the Times, and then he makes breakfast for both of us, scrambled eggs and toast. So what should we do today? He says. I mean, besides practicing. Want to go out for a while? I shrug. It looks like a decent day. I'd be happy with a walk along the Hudson or something. Or do you want to be a real tourist? Statue of Liberty? Empire State Building? Something like that? He shakes his head. No, that's too much. But I do need some new running shoes, and I've heard that the new New York Nike Town store is pretty cool. How's that for excitement? Sounds fine. I call the store to check their hours. The place is open until 7, and we decide there's enough time for each of us to practice for an hour before we go. So we do, because we're both such insanely responsible young musicians. Then it's a subway ride down to Columbus Circle. I love to watch people in New York, but if you make eye contact with the wrong person, it can get scary. Like the woman who was singing her own opera on a bus one afternoon. I was new in town, and I smiled and nodded at her, and suddenly the lady stands up and points and begins singing at the top of her lungs about me. This child of deadly Zeus, she brings ruin and destruction down upon our heads. Shun her, feel her evil eye, for she has sold her soul to the blood-red moon. Her performance ran for more than 30 blocks, and all the time my face was beet red because everyone was looking at me. And when I got off, the lady rushed to the back of the bus and kept singing at me out the window. Stuff like that can make a deep impression on a young newcomer to the big city. So now I do my people watching in quick glances, and in our subway car I don't spot anyone who grabs my imagination. In fact, Robert and I may be the most interesting people around at the moment. Everybody else is probably watching us. And as I think this, I notice that I'm enjoying sitting next to Robert, and realize that when people see us sitting like this, they might think we are together, that he's my boyfriend. And suddenly I feel like Lizzie in Pride and Prejudice, and Robert is Mr. Darcy, and I'm writing Robert into my story, imagining what the two of us would be like as a couple. The thought makes me blush, and to punish myself, I say, so tell me about your girlfriend. You said her name's Alicia? He nods and gets this smile on his face, a sweet one I haven't seen yet. Right, Alicia. Well, she's real smart, and she's a great writer, and we like reading the same kind of books. We listen to a lot of music, and she's heard me play my trumpet more than anyone else on the planet. And I'm not kidding. She is not afraid of anything. Makes me feel like a wimp. The train stops at 72nd Street, and our conversation is interrupted by the noise of 20 people getting off and 30 others getting on. When we're moving again, I say, do you have a picture of her? He shakes his head. Not even one. I know that sounds strange, but she's never seen me at all, what I look like. So I keep her pictures in my head, like she does. I mean, she's really pretty and everything. It's just not why I like her. I let that sink in, and now I'm really curious. Doesn't it bother you sometimes, like, that you can't go see a movie together and do other stuff? He shakes his head. We watch DVDs all the time. I describe what's going on right while it's happening. I'm a genius at it, so I get to watch the movie, and I also get to watch her face as I tell her about it. It's the best. And if you've never been the guide for a blind person who's riding a bike in front of you, it's an experience. I mean, we only do that at night in the museum parking lot. It's huge and flat, and all I have to do is keep her from hitting the light poles. And we work out at a gym together, and we've been camping and kayaking, even skiing on some little hills up in Wisconsin. So it's not like we don't do stuff. It's just different, that's all. I can only imagine how different it would be, like learning to see the world all over again, or maybe like learning how to play the violin in the dark. We get off at 59th Street Station at the bottom of Central Park, walk down Broadway to 57th Street, and then go east. He wants to go into the big bookstore in the corner, and normally, so would I, but I'm watching the time. I really do want to get back to my practice room, so I suggest that we save that pleasure for some other trip. A block later, I got a surprise for him, but he sees it before I can tell him. Hey, look, Carnegie Hall. Everybody's played there, even Miles Davis. And watching Robert's face, I remember the first time I saw the place, all lit up at night with banners and announcing a performance by Yo-Yo Ma. At this moment, it looks more like a drab hotel than the world's most famous concert hall. A glass and metal marquee reaches out over the sidewalk, and if the fancy old bronze poster frames weren't hanging on either side of the doorways, it would be easy to walk right past the place. My teacher told me that his namesake, Pyotr Ilk-Tiamatsky, was the conductor of the very first concert here in 1891. And when I told my Uncle Belden that I'd actually attended a performance at Carnegie Hall, he said, "So, what? Is it like the Grand Ole Opry?" And I told him, yes, in a way, I guess it is. After we hike east and across Fifth Avenue, the Nike store is right there, and unlike Carnegie Hall, there's no way to miss it. The facade is mostly polished granite, and there's this huge arched window that goes up and up. It's not your everyday shoe store at the mall, which is the full extent of my relationship with footwear. This place is more like an athletics theme park or a high-tech Greek temple that specializes in foot worship. We wander around for almost an hour, just gawking at the plastic and the polished metal and the wall-sized graphics of the sports gods, plus all the multimedia displays 5 floors of it. And then Robert finally picks out a pair of ridiculously expensive running shoes. After he pays, we start to head for the exit on the far side of the atrium. Suddenly Robert stops, so I stop too. He's looking at something, and I turn my head to see, but he steps around in front of me. No, don't stare. What? Stare at what? Because from the look on his face, I'm thinking it's got to be Michael Jordan himself. Or maybe a vampire. He's talking to me in a rushed whisper. Okay, look at the tile wall. To the left of the Tiger Woods poster. No, don't. Don't point. And try not to stare. Just take a quick look at the wall and tell me what you see, because I think I see something there. So I look, and there is something. I say, there's sort of a shadow, except it's not very dark, and it's kind of blurry, but it's a man's shadow. He nods, agreeing. Okay. And do you see how his shadow's moving? Yeah, the guy keeps turning his head. I mean the shadow. It's blurry, but it looks like he's got a lot of hair. And a beard. Okay, Robert says, that's the shadow. Now locate the person who's making the shadow. I look around trying to be casual about it. From the hair and the beard and the shadow, I'm thinking to spot a hippie or maybe some homeless guy with dreadlocks. There's an older woman with an umbrella and a canvas shopping bag and a young mom with a baby in a stroller. I see 2 teenage girls wearing black leather jackets and 10 or 12 college guys, all with short hair, and most of them tall. Looks like a whole basketball team, and lots of other people, but no long-haired, bearded guys. Not near, not far, not on the first or the second floor, not anywhere. And I turn to glance at the guy's shape again, and suddenly the shadow wiggles, and it's gone. Just gone. The hairs on the back of my neck tingle, and I say, What? What was that? Robert whispers, probably nothing. Let's go. But I can tell he's spooked.